I'm Nicole London, and I'm here with my mentor, Chelsea Lehman, to discuss my secondary first lesson for my post conference.
All right, tell me about your lesson.
So, for this lesson, my target student, one of his IEP goals is to be able to graph equations, specifically those in slope intercept form. However, my target student really struggled to graph in general. So, we're finishing up a unit with translations. And so for this lesson, I really wanted to focus on how you graph points so that when we transition into those graphing equations with those lines, he would be able to actually graph the points, and that wouldn't be the issue. So we could focus more on the algebra skills. Um, so I think that was helpful in ensuring that he had those skills to be able to graph points, so that as we move on throughout the year, we're not struggling with those foundational skills. So that's why I chose to spend a little bit of extra time on that and do a little bit of extra review.
Okay. Tell me about what went really well for this lesson.
So for this lesson, my a scenario for this entire project where my kids were um, like producers of a movie, and there were characters, and the director made changes. And so based on the changes we made, there were four animals. We moved the fox, we made the pig bigger, and so that was how we learned the concepts of a dilation or a translation. And so for that, my kids they really love video games, so they were super into that, and they really enjoyed being able to like be able to talk to the characters and being able to interact with those characters. So instead of just saying, here, plot this point, plot this triangle, now move it, we had the pig and the fox and the hippo. So I think that was probably the best part about that lesson.
Sure. Okay. If you could teach this lesson again, what would you do differently?
Um, I think I would change up my pacing a little bit.
Okay.
Because for my bell ringer question, kids, it was like this was at the end of the lesson. And so we had gone over translations and we had gone over dilations, and they had two questions. And so when I had planned, I thought, okay, that might take 5 or 10 minutes, and I can move on and really get farther. But as it goes, sometimes my kids really had an off day that day, and it was like a brand new day. We remembered the cow and the pig and the fox, but we didn't remember anything else. So we spent most of the period reviewing those two questions, which, while that was important,
Sure.
I wasn't able to accomplish everything that I had planned for that lesson.
Sure.
And so, we just had to finish that up the next day.
Okay. You kind of already answered this, but what background knowledge from this target student did you consider when teaching this lesson?
So, Sheldon, he has a diagnosis of autism, and one of his main struggles is he gets very easily overwhelmed. And when he gets overwhelmed, he just completely shuts down. He misses a lot of school because he's nervous and he's anxious. And so, as we were doing the lesson, I tried to really chunk it into, we're going to practice just this one skill, and then they're going to practice, and then we're going to move on to the next skill. And after we practice all of them, then we can put them all together and actually use them. And so, even for him, I wrote the steps out on the board so that once he forgot, oh, now I know the points for my pig, but now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
So now he can go and he can reference that and say, oh, okay, now I just have to move to step 2. So that way he's not as anxious. And then he ends up, working a little bit better, and then becomes less of a disruption because he's not overwhelmed, and now he's trying to play a game with his friend.
Sure.